Hey guys, what's going on? NCS Master here, and got another bit of an unscripted discussion video here. I kind of wanted to make this one in a similar style to the previous, as there was a topic that I kind of ended up inadvertently drumming up on Twitter recently, and it seemed to get a lot of invigorated responses for one reason or another, and it was something that I felt kind of passionately about, and clearly many others did as well, going by some of the Twitter replies. So I wanted to go a bit more in depth with it and just make a full-on video about the discussion. So much like my previous video that was more unscripted, just shooting straight from the hip, got some bullet points here, but I figured this would be a fun topic to go into and explain my stance on it and why I feel the way I do. So if you follow me on Twitter, which if you subscribe to me here, that is likely around 95% of you, you'll know that a little over a week ago, I put out this tweet here, which if you saw the thumbnail, you should immediately know what this is about. So we got news recently that that Blade game that's being made by Arcane and being put out under Microsoft that was announced back at the Game Awards around a month or so ago, that game isn't expected to come out for another 4 years or so. It's set around 2027, so around 3 to 4 years. So that game is still going to be a long ways away. We're not going to know anything about it for a good long while. And a lot of people were saying in the replies to that, oh, why is this going to take so long? Why'd you reveal it and all that? And I kind of wanted to echo that sentiment. So I just threw together a little meme, took the meme image of Lisa Simpson on stage with a spotlight on it and just threw on my own text. If a game is going to take longer than 2 years to release, don't reveal it yet. And I put it out there figuring some people would respond to it, get some attention, because that seems to be the opinion that a lot of people were sharing in this general sentiment. Little did I know that tweet would receive nearly 70,000 likes and get thousands of retweets and attention from many different people, from random nobodies on Twitter to actual big name Twitter accounts like Imran Khan and Paul Tassi. Yeah, I can't say I was expecting that. Now, I had a lot of people who agreed with me, but also a surprising number of people who heavily disagreed with me. There were those that felt that, I had a point with it being, around 2 years or so, that seems like a fair time period, but also many who felt that I was just being impatient, which I'll get into that later, how I don't think it's just being impatient, but also, of course, game development takes time and all of that, and they need to drum up interest and yada, yada, yada. There was a bunch of contentious points against the topic that I felt like, given how divisive that tweet ended up being in some responses to it, I wanted to make a full video on it, because there were a lot of reasons. There were people saying that, it shouldn't matter, or explaining why it should be this way, but I'm just going to be honest, I vehemently disagree with a lot of these reasons. As much as I am open to hearing other people's sides, I firmly stand behind my original tweet. I think I am not being unreasonable for the most part with what I had said in that original meme, because it was a meme to, it's funny, but also I did legitimately believe in that point behind it. So I wanted to go into further as to why I feel that way, and also why I don't agree with a lot of the counterpoints that people had brought up with it. So yeah, much like what was said in the meme, in the tweet, my upper limit, what I personally believe should be the maximum of when you reveal a game, from when it's revealed to the time we have it in our hands, should be 2 years. I think 2 years works really good as a maximum, as that gives, more than a year, a couple years there. So there's plenty of time to where you can show something substantial to gamers in its initial reveal, but also that gives you a good amount of time to actually continue working on the game and expand stuff, flesh it out. So you're not up against a hard deadline or just, waiting to drop stuff immediately, but you're also not leaving people in limbo forever forever, which is gonna be a recurring theme in my discussion with this video. And I do feel before getting too deep into this, I should stress a couple of things about this post. When I say 2 years, I'm specifically talking about from reveal to release. I don't think that games should be made in 2 years. Hell no. I am firmly aware of how modern game development takes way longer than 2 years, especially if you're making a high, big budget AAA game. It's going to take a lot longer than 2 years. So, cooking behind the scenes, absolutely, that's going to take, 5, 6 years from whole thing start to finish from what we don't see. But from when we see the game, when you stand on a big stage and reveal it to everybody, I believe that it should be within the consumer's hands by 2 years from that point. I believe you set a precedent from when you reveal it like that. And I do also want to emphasize when I am making this point, I am specifically talking about AAA studios and publishers in particular. Indies and Kickstarters, those are a very different story. Like, those are much smaller teams. They don't make anywhere near as much money. They're not working with intellectual properties that already have heavily established fan bases, so they actually do need to build up interest and momentum in their games to get the word out there, make people more aware of it, and get more time to raise awareness. So, indies, Kickstarters, I totally get that. I don't rag on them for doing so because there's a bunch of other reasons they gotta do it. Like, they have to fight a lot harder to get attention and word out for their games and drum up interest in it. So, if they take longer than 2 years, perfectly understandable. No complaints here from that on my end. It's with the big name devs and the big time studios is where I start to get a little irked with stuff like this. So like I said, I got a lot of people agreeing with my tweet, feeling that that time frame was understandable. In fact, I actually got some people who were saying it should be shorter. I had some people say, like, oh, it should only be 1 year or 6 months from when you reveal the game, which I think that's a little bit much, give them a little bit of time from release, but, I can understand people are getting really tired of the long-ass waits and the CG-only trailers, so I can understand it. But I also got a bunch of reasons of pushback on my original idea and tweet. Namely, some of the biggest reasons were, oh, it's used to hire and attract workers to the project, or, oh, they need to drum up interest for the game, or it's to get ahead of leakers, or my personal favorite, be patient and shut up. Boy, you can really tell the person in question just has a rock solid argument when that's the first thing they go to, huh? Now, with a lot of these points, on a basis, on some level, I can kind of understand maybe 1 or 2 of them, but I ultimately just do not agree with these points through and through, and that's why I'm making this video, because I wanted to go further in depth with my stance on this topic, because I do feel it's a topic that is getting a lot more discussion in recent times, as in the past, I would say maybe 7 to 8 years in particular, especially as we started to get into like the 8th generation, it became a lot more common for games to just be announced with like a logo or say this is in development, and then years upon years upon years of nothing, or like a CG only trailer that shows absolutely no gameplay and the aforementioned years upon years of nothing. It's becoming much more of a trend, and way more people are getting tired of it, so people are voicing their displeasure with it, and that's why I want to go more in depth here, because it's such a it's a spicy topic. Like, no other way to put it, especially with it continuing to rise and rise the more game development increases in scope and scale. So I'll just start getting into it. So the first point that I saw brought up a lot, and I would say was the most common and widely used counter argument to my tweet, was this type of early reveal with like a logo or just brief CG trailer is used to hire people. Like, it says, hey, we're making this game, why don't you come work on it? Ooh, you could get to work on this high level big name IP, get your name out there. Now, again, I kind of get the general idea of this, but when you look further into it, it just doesn't seem like that strong of an argument to me. First of all, and I feel this is very poignant given the year that we're coming off of, it is fucking rich for the game industry to be looking for people to hire when it has been absolutely plagued with mass layoffs and entire studio releases. Like, you want proof? Just go look up this past year of how many people were fired or let go or laid off just to save a few bucks for higher ups. So to say that they need to get their names out there to hire people, yeah, I ain't buying that for a second when it comes to the big name studios. Again, indies, very different. I get it there. But with the big time boys, yeah, it doesn't really align with this now, does it? Second of all, there's many ways to hire people besides announcing something on a massive stage to the general public, saying to, just the average consumers, hey, we're making this game, and then whispering behind the backs of everybody else, oh, and also we need people to work on it, so could you come do that for us, wink, wink. Like, we did not always have massive stages like this to announce games and hire people that would be seen by millions of people across the internet. There have been and is plenty of other ways to attract people to work on a project, like just putting out simple online hiring ads and just like mentioning the types of games you'd be making or vaguely bringing up like franchises if you want to use those to attract people. Like Monolith Soft actually did that. They put out like hiring ads that said, hey, we're going to be working on projects that are associated with the Legend of Zelda and Xenoblade series, which, that will work for people who are looking to work in the industry. They will see active hiring ads if they're trying to pursue a job and say, hey, oh, they're going to be working with Zelda and Xenoblade. Those are big, big names that I would be interested in working on. That works just as effectively without showing to millions upon millions of consumers, which I guarantee 97% or more of people who see those trailers and ads, they aren't going to work on or pursue work on those games and franchises. So like a hiring ad just makes way more sense for targeting directly to get those people. And again, stuff like this had to work before because, like I said earlier, the game industry did not always have these massive stages to announce to millions to get people on board, so they clearly had to hire people some other way beforehand without doing all of like just this, here's a logo, come work for us. Thirdly, if you want to hire people, I think it's much more of a meaningful statement to have a good reputation, build up a solid resume to entice people to come in and, offer and show things like good paying wages and a positive working environment. I'm pretty sure that is a better way to attract people than dangling like a carrot on a stick with a big IP saying, ooh, why don't you, it's like what was it, like the Geico or State Farm commercial, like the fisherman guy, I got you $1, I got you a big IP here to work on, you gotta be quicker than that to come work for it. Like, I guarantee showing these workers that you will pay them fairly, or even more than fairly, you will pay them very handsomely, and that they will be able to come into a positive working environment. That would be guaranteed to be way more meaningful and better towards hiring people than Ubisoft coming out and saying, hey, you want to work on the next Assassin's Creed? Or Arcane saying, hey, you want to work on Blade, without us giving any indication of what the game is actually going to be like. Like, I don't know. I think that makes sense, right? And also, maybe it's just me, but personally speaking, I think it's probably a better idea to have your whole team in place and know what you're doing before announcing a huge project to the entire world for them to anticipate and see it and know that it's coming. Like, that's not I'm not crazy, right? Rhetorical question, don't answer that. But like, that shouldn't be unreasonable, right? Like, to when you're going to show this massive project and announce it to millions and say, oh, get hyped and get excited for this, it shouldn't be unreasonable to have the overwhelming majority or preferably all of your teams set in stone with a general outline of what you're doing rather than, here, look at this, now please bring people on board so we can fully know what we're doing here. I mean, right? I mean, again, indies, very different. I feel like I need to stress that many, many times throughout this video. Very, very different when it comes to independent projects. But for a big AAA studio that's going to be making a massive game with a huge budget that's going to be pushing the edges of technology and all that, or is for a very, very big and beloved IP, I feel like it's best to have everybody on the same track here and get the guidelines set in place so everybody knows what they're doing before you make that public to everybody. Like, to the consumers who aren't going to be making this game and who are only going to be investing hype and money into it. Which that actually leads well into the next big point that was brought up for a lot of the counter arguments for my tweet, and that was, oh, they announced these games early to drum up interest in them. Which, again, I know I've been saying it a lot, I get it for indies, but, different for AAA developers. For AAA devs, when it comes to stuff like this, how many of them legitimately need to drum up interest in a lot of these properties? Like, does Square Enix need to drum up interest in Kingdom Hearts 4? Or does Bethesda need to drum up interest in Elder Scrolls 6? No, they can announce that these things are coming out 6 months from when they're first revealed, and everybody and their grandmother would buy them because, no shit, it's Kingdom Hearts and Elder Scrolls. You can just say they're coming and people are already invested and excited. There is no active need to get investment built up. It will happen immediately for these properties. Not to mention, in this day and age, hype dies down quickly when you have nothing substantial to show for it or nothing for customers to sink their teeth into. Like, how are consumers supposed to just get excited over a logo or a CG trailer where we don't see anything else beyond it for years? Like, yeah, we'll get excited upon the initial announcement, like, oh shit, this is being made, that's awesome, but you can only go for so long off of just the general idea, which is what these companies do. They just present the general idea of this is in development and then just expect that alone to carry the hype for years. Like, how excited can people get for games like Dragon Quest XII or Metroid Prime 4 or Fable 4 when there's nothing to actually look at or get an idea of what this game is truly going to be like? All that we're going off of is it's a new Dragon Quest or a new Metroid Prime or a new Fable. So you're riding solely off of hype, off of the base announcement of it's a new entry, which also just completely ignores any of the potential changes or alterations these new games could make, which can be different from just, oh, it's a new entry. Well, what if this new entry is different in many ways, which seems to be the route that Dragon Quest XII is going from what we've heard in interviews, where that game is going to be more mature and kind of darker than previous Dragon Quest games. So is that just supposed to carry the hype for all this time for people? I don't see how that's supposed to happen. And this is even worse for when the IP is brand new, or it's at least an IP that getting a game is brand new to it. Like the Blade game, which is the whole thing that started all this when I made that tweet in response to it. We have no idea what that is going to play like outside of vaguely basing things off the IP itself and the previous works of the dev. But we won't know the true, like, factually what this is going to play like for years now. At least with something like the aforementioned Dragon Quest XII or Metroid Prime 4, we at least know generally, oh, that's going to play like a Dragon Quest game. That's going to play like a Metroid Prime game. How are we supposed to know what Blade is going to play like other than, okay, I've seen the Blade movies. I know Arcane has made Prey and like Deathloop and Redfall. So are they gonna play like any of those? Some mixture of them? We don't know. So it's like, oh, we're announcing this to get people hyped about it. What is there to get hyped about? We have no idea what this is gonna be like. And we won't truly know what it will be like for years until they fully reveal it or we get information leaked out to us. Which that leads into the next point that a lot of people brought up from my original tweet. They do this to beat the leakers, and so they can reveal it on their own terms instead of it getting leaked ahead of time. And look, I get a lot of devs want to avoid this, and I understand for them. Leaks suck, and it totally is. It makes sense why. You know, they put all this time into it only for it to get shown off way before stuff is ready, or before they themselves get the chance to properly reveal it and get that initial shock reaction. I can understand, and that it legit does suck for them. But unfortunately, at the point we're at in the game industry and the gaming landscape, leaks are just, they're unavoidable. And so while it sucks and we wish they didn't happen, we kind of just have to accept that they will happen and kind of got to roll with the punches and figure out what can be done about that. Because with how big leaks have been getting in recent years, they're only going to end up becoming more rampant. You can try and combat them in some ways, but I feel that just announcing shit years and years in advance really isn't an effective way to counter leakers. Because, like, here's the thing. Even for games that do stuff like that, they can still get leaked ahead in advance, even if it was just going to be a logo reveal very, very early. And many times, even when a game is just revealed with a logo very early, there can still be easily ways that games are leaked outside of that, besides just announcing, oh hey, this project is being made. Like, we have seen that the extent that these leakers will go to. Just ask Insomniac how well revealing a game ahead of time with the logo is going to counteract leakers. If they want to leak something and get info out there for one reason or another, whether it be like ransomware or just, haha, it's fun to like leak the info, they'll still find a way to do it. And it won't just involve saying that the project is being made. There can be whole ass trailers or never supposed to be seen alpha footage that gets dropped out into the world. Again, we just saw that with GTA 6 and the Wolverine games, so like, putting out the logo isn't really going to counter leakers because they'll still find a way to do it. And even in the cases where a leaker gets the news ahead of time with a game, if they just say, oh, this is being made, yeah, you technically don't get the immediate reveal of all that, which, that is kind of frustrating, totally understandable, it's not fun, but that type of announcement from the leaker, that's really no different from what a lot of these studios are already doing with just showing a logo or CG trailer. And a lot of these leakers, people don't even immediately believe them for one reason or another. So you still get the opportunity to show that off and get people hyped. So I feel that if you are just going to announce a game years in advance to try and beat leakers from them announcing your project, it ultimately just doesn't really do much in the grand scheme of things, because either the leaker will still go a workaround and put different stuff out there, or it's not enough back in return for the outcome of what you're doing here. It's like, oh, here's this game that you're not going to see for half a decade, but haha, we beat those leakers. Like, I just don't feel that that's enough of a reason to go out with that method, at least the way I see it. And the final big point I wanted to address from the detractors of my original post were the ones who were saying, just shut up and be patient. Again, real solid argument, that one. Look, on some level, yes, I agree. we should be patient for things. We should know how to wait and not demand everything just be now and, oh, give it to me. I don't care. Just, I want it all now. I understand. There's people like that who are being unreasonable and ridiculous when it comes to announcements and expectations. They do need to cool their jets in some regards with what people are expecting. But I think there comes a point where it gets a little absurd with how long these companies are announcing their game ahead of time and saying, oh, just wait and be patient. Metroid Prime 4 was revealed back in 2017. That game was originally revealed when I was a junior in high school. We have now entered 2024, and I am nearly 2 years graduated from university. Like, bruh. There's being patient, and then there's just expecting people to wait an insane amount of time. Does there just not come a point where we can reasonably demand that these devs and these creators show us something to at least sink our teeth into and get a look at? Because I very much think there does reach a point with that. Like, we're now getting games that aren't just not getting released several years from when they were originally revealed. We're getting games that go dead silent for several years from when they were originally revealed. So forget releasing. We're not even hearing anything from these games. Like, going back to Metroid Prime 4, even if, you say, oh, well, that 2017 date doesn't count because they restarted development at the beginning of 2019. Okay, you know what? Fair. That's still 5 years ago by now. And again, we have heard zilch. Like, at what point can we say this is getting absurd? Because if you ask me, we're hitting that point with some of these games. We are now getting titles that are being announced at the beginning of console generations that we won't get until the end of console generations. Like, how? I'm sorry. How is that not seen as ridiculous? If a game is gonna take that long, where in some cases we might not even know if we're playing it on the hardware that it was originally announced for, maybe hold off on it? Like, that should not be an unreasonable assessment. And there's other issues too of announcing a game too early. What happens, when a game just explodes in the oven and we have no idea what's even happening with it anymore? Like, I've mentioned Metroid Prime 4 a couple times. That had to completely reset development, and we have had no idea what's happening with it before the reset or after the reset. It's literally the reset is all we know of it, and we don't know what's been changed or why or what caused it to get blown up in the first place outside of general project unhappiness. Or something even worse like the KOTOR remake. We've had zero clear updates on that, despite that being revealed over 2 years ago, and all that we've heard from has been behind the scenes news that's been so bad, we don't even know if that game is still happening. Like, people are debating if that game is even alive anymore, because we've gotten multiple behind the scenes words and, rumors that the project was just dead. So it's like, maybe that reveal that early, not the best idea if you have the potential to run into a big problem like this, where there's a not unreasonable view that the whole game just got canned because of how bad stuff's been going. Oh wow, that early reveal did wonders now. Or hell, another point. What happens when a game is announced so early, but then it goes through those big types of changes all throughout development, and they're shown off and we see them, that the game becomes almost unrecognizable in cases from when it was originally shown off and what originally got people invested in it, to the point where fans or devs can prefer an older version of that game from what was changed and what we would inevitably get because it was announced so early that all those big alterations were made in that time period. Trust me, ask Final Fantasy 15 fans about that feeling. They will have strong opinions. I understand that we need to wait. Game development takes a ton of time and effort, and it shouldn't be rushed because Lord knows the industry already has way too big of a problem of rushing and crunching developers for projects that just need to meet deadlines. So, they just straight up to the point of nearly abusing these people instead of treating them like human beings. Like, God, it's legit sad, some of the stories we hear. But I also think there comes a point with these reveals where hoping to get the game or hear news about it, it's no longer impatience, but it transforms into understandable annoyance from being left in the dark for years upon years at a time. There's patience, and then there's sitting around having no idea what's going on and waiting so long you're at a completely different point in your life, and we still have no word on these games. There may be hype for these titles in their initial reveal, but that isn't gonna last without substance. Games are starting to take so long that they're becoming memes for how long they've been in development and are getting mocked for it. Trust me, that is not hype. Just for AAA companies, please just wait to reveal your game for when you have something substantial, or when you do it, know it won't take that long for customers to get it in their hands. Again, 2 years to me, the perfect high point for how long it should take for a game. Like, a perfect example of a very recent one at that, Spider-Man 2, an A+ example of hitting the upper limit. That game was revealed in September of 2021, and we had it in our hands of October of 2023. Just a hair over 2 years. It got enough time for people to build up hype, get excited for it, maybe get a little itchy about, kind of want to see something, and then we got trailers, we got big showcases, we got plenty for people to see and to build up hype within the last several months before we officially got it. A+ example of how to do that. And one last thing I did want to mention as well, some people did bring up that if games took many, many years to come out, but they gave consistent and constant updates, that could really help with the wait. And honestly, I 100% agree. If games that just showed a logo or a CG trailer initially kept giving solid updates year in and year out, like, they would show, a little bit more of a trailer or some concept art, or the devs would give meaningful updates on what's going on with these games, I think that could really help with the super long waits that we get. But unfortunately, unless you're an indie or a Kickstarter, which they're admittedly a lot better about that than AAA studios, that rarely happens when it comes to the big time devs. They will just say, hey, here's the thing, and then dip for 5 to 7 years, expecting everybody to just be satisfied with, oh, look at this, be excited. And then it's like, oh, sorry, you're not going to see this until you're like 10 years down the line of a full beard and 2 kids. Like, I'm sorry, what? I think ultimately it's just a trend that needs to stop, or at the very least needs to slow down, because we know how the game industry is. Once they get their claws into something, into a trend that they like, it starts snowballing further and further and further. And I'm not going to be looking forward to if we reach the point later in this decade where around 2028 and going into the 10th generation of consoles, we start getting games that are announced and then they take a decade to come out from their initial reveal. No, we cannot hit that point. We cannot think that is okay. Hey, that's ridiculous. I know it is a very hotly contested topic because game development in general is a very hotly contested topic. Again, with what all the stories that I've mentioned with layoffs and badly treating workers. I get that it's a very touchy subject, but I do think there is a very healthy middle ground that can be reached here with better treatment of workers, better planning, and a better understanding of your schedule and roadmap for when you originally reveal a game to getting an idea of when consumers will actually get it in their hands. There is a happy medium here. It's just going to take effort to reach. And I think some companies, in a way, they have reached that. Like, look at something like Nintendo. They announced Mario Wonder and Mario RPG in a Nintendo Direct in the middle of last year. Release dates with those first trailers, and they were coming in just a matter of a few months, and people loved it. Like, people were actually happy that we got trailers with the first trailers at that showed release dates, and we could expect these in reasonable time frames. I remember Metroid Dread did the exact same thing. Revealed at E3, was out in October, and tons of people were hyped about it. If anything, getting a release date in the initial trailer is one of the most effective ways to get people hyped now because people are tired of these year-long waits and CG-only trailers. But I think by now I've made my point and stance pretty clear. I think this is something that could seriously be changed, and while I do understand on some level where the people who disagree with me are coming from, I do still ultimately stand by my point and feel things can be improved when it comes to revealing a game long before when we actually will get it in our hands. There's a good middle ground we can reach here with consumer patience and giving reasonable expectation upon how long we can wait for these games. Much like a lot of stuff with the gaming industry, there needs to be improvement. It's a great industry, and we're getting amazing products out of it, but a lot of work can be done. And there's a lot of videos that I could make on this industry, but that's for another time. But hey, if you guys are still here by the end of this, thank you all so much for watching. It's really good to keep making videos well into the start of the new year, and I'm hoping that I can make 2024 a really good year for this channel. And again, thank you all so much for watching. I wouldn't be able to do all this without you, and I appreciate all the support you guys give me. Here's to a great new year, and I'll see you all in the next video.